BeBop Jazz. BeBop Jazz demanded a very high level of musical ability. The music is very complex. Innovative professional musicians invented bebop in the early 40s, and the music evolved. Wikipedia has a very good article that is long and very complete. If you are really interested in understanding bebop, read the Wikipedia article on the subject, and you will have some very good reading. Bebop. From Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. Bebop. Stylistic origins swing, Kansas City jazz cultural origins mid-1940s, United States typical instruments clarinet, saxophone, trumpet, trombone, piano, double bass, drums, keyboards, electric guitars, acoustic guitars derivative forms avant-garde jazz, post-bop subgenres, hard bop, other subgenres, regional scenes. United States. Bebop or bop is a style of jazz characterized by a fast tempo, instrumental virtuosity, and improvisation based on the combination of harmonic structure and melody. It was developed in the early and mid-1940s. It first surfaced in musicians' art sometime during the first 2 years of American involvement in the Second World War. This style of jazz ultimately became synonymous with modern jazz, as either category reached a certain final maturity in the 1960s. History. Bebop wasn't developed in any deliberate way, says Thelonious Monk. The 1939 recording of Body and Soul by Coleman Hawkins is an important antecedent of bebop. Hawkins' willingness to stray even briefly from the ordinary resolution of musical themes and his playful jumps to double time signaled a departure from existing jazz. The recording was popular, but more importantly, from a historical perspective, Hawkins became an inspiration to a younger generation of jazz musicians, most notably Charlie Parker in Kansas City. In the 1940s, the younger generation of jazz musicians created a new style that came out of the 1930s swing music. They partially strove to counter the popularization of swing with non-danceable music that demanded listening. Mavericks like Dizzy Gillespie, Charlie Parker, Bud Powell, and Thelonious Monk were influenced by the preceding generation's adventurous soloists, such as pianists Art Tatum and Earl Hines, tenor saxophonists Coleman Hawkins and Lester Young, and trumpeter Roy Eldridge. Gillespie and Parker, both out of the Earl Hines band in Chicago, had traveled with some of the pre-bop masters, including Jack Teagarden, Earl Hines, and Jane McShann. While Gillespie was with Cab Calloway, he practiced with bassist Milt Hinton and developed some of the key harmonic and chordal innovations that would be the cornerstones of the new music. Charlie Parker did the same with bassist Gene Ramey while with McShann's group. These forerunners of the new music, which would later be termed bebop or bop, although Parker himself never used the term, feeling it demeaned the music, began exploring advanced harmonies, complex syncopation, altered chords, and chord substitutions. The bop musicians advanced these techniques with a more freewheeling, intricate, and often arcane approach. Minton's Playhouse in New York served as an incubator and experimental theater for early bebop players, including Don Byas, Thelonious Monk, and Charlie Christian, who had already hinted at the bop style in innovative solos with Benny Goodman's band. Part of the atmosphere created at gems like the ones found at Minton's Playhouse was an air of exclusivity. The regular musicians would often reharmonize the standards in order to exclude those whom they considered outsiders or simply weaker players. Christian's major influence was in the realm of rhythmic phrasing. Christian commonly emphasized weak beats and offbeats, and often ended his phrases on the second half of the fourth beat. Christian experimented with asymmetrical phrasing, which was to become a core element of the new bop style. Swing improvisation was commonly constructed in 2 or 4-bar phrases that corresponded to the harmonic cadences of the underlying song form. Bop improvisers would often deploy phrases over an odd number of bars, and overlap their phrases across bar lengths and across major harmonic cadences. Christian and the other early boppers would also begin stating a harmony in their improvised line before it appeared in the song form, being outlined by the rhythm section. This momentary dissonance creates a strong sense of forward motion in the improvisation. Swing improvisers commonly emphasized the first and third beats of a measure. But in a bop composition such as Dizzy Gillespie's Salt Peanuts, the rhythmic emphasis switches to the second and fourth beats of the measure. Such new rhythmic phrasing techniques give the typical bop solo a feeling of floating free over the underlying song form, rather than being tied into the song form. Swing drummers had kept up a steady 4-to-the-bar pulse on the bass drum. Bop drummers, led by Kenny Clark, moved the drum set's time-keeping function to the right or hi-hat cymbal, reserving the bass drum for accents. Bass drum accents were colloquially termed dropping bombs. Notable bop drummers such as Max Roach, Shadow Wilson, Philly Joe Jones, Roy Haynes, and Kenny Clark began to support and respond to soloists, almost like a shifting call and response. This change increased the importance of the string bass. Now, the bass not only maintained the music's harmonic foundation, but also became responsible for establishing a metronomic rhythmic foundation by playing a walking bass line of 4-quarter notes to the bar. While small swing ensembles commonly functioned without a bassist, the new bop style required a bass in every small ensemble. By 1950, a second wave of bebop musicians such as Clifford Brown and Sonny Stitt began to smooth out the rhythmic eccentricities of early bebop. Instead of using jagged phrasing to create rhythmic interest, as the early boppers had, these musicians constructed their improvised lines out of long strings of eighth notes, and simply accented certain notes in the line to create rhythmic variety. Musical style. Bebop differed drastically from the straightforward compositions of the swing era and was instead characterized by fast tempos, asymmetrical phrasing, intricate melodies, and rhythm sections that expanded on their role as tempo keepers. The music itself seemed jarringly different to the ears of the public, who were used to the bouncy, organized, danceable tunes of Benny Goodman and Glenn Miller during the swing era. Instead, bebop appeared to sound racing, nervous, erratic, and often fragmented. But to jazz musicians and jazz music lovers, bebop was an exciting and beautiful revolution in the art of jazz. Bebop was a label that certain journalists later gave it, but we never labeled the music. It was just modern music, we would call it. We wouldn't call it anything, really, just music. Kenny Clark. While swing music tended to feature orchestrated big band arrangements, bebop music highlighted improvisation. Typically a theme, a head, often the main melody of a pop or jazz standard of the swing era, would be presented together at the beginning and the end of each piece, with improvisational solos, based on the chords of the tune. Thus, the majority of a song in bebop style would be improvisation, the only threads holding the work together being the underlying harmonies, played by the rhythm section. Sometimes improvisation included references to the original melody or to other well-known melodic lines, quotes, or riffs. Sometimes they were entirely original, spontaneous melodies, from start to finish. Chord progressions for BeBop tunes were often taken directly from popular swing-era songs and reused with a new and more complex melody, forming new compositions. This practice was already well established in earlier jazz, but came to be central to the BeBop style. The style made use of several relatively common chord progressions, such as blues at bass 1, 4, 5, but infused with 2, 5 motion and rhythm changes 1, 6, 2, 5, the chords to the 1930s pop standard I Got Rhythm. Late pop also moved towards extended forms that represented a departure from pop and show tunes. Pop musicians also employed several harmonic devices not typical of previous jazz. Complicated harmonic substitutions for more basic chords became commonplace. These substitutions often emphasized certain dissonant intervals such as the flat ninth, sharp ninth, or the sharp 11th/ tritone. This unprecedented harmonic development which took place in bebop is often traced back to a transcendent moment experienced by Charlie Parker while performing Cherokee at Clark Monroe's Uptown House, New York, in early 1942. As described by Parker, I'd been getting bored with the stereotyped changes that were being used. And I kept thinking there's bound to be something else. I could hear it sometimes. I couldn't play it. I was working over Cherokee, and as I did, I found that by using the higher intervals of a chord as a melody line and backing them with appropriately related changes, I could play the thing I'd been hearing. It came alive. Gerhard Kubik postulates that the harmonic development in bebop sprung from the blues and other African-related tonal sensibilities rather than 20th century Western art music, as some have suggested. Kubik states auditory inclinations were the African legacy in Parker's life, reconfirmed by the experience of the blues tonal system, a sound world at odds with the Western diatonic chord categories. Bebop musicians eliminated Western-style functional harmony in their music while retaining the strong central tonality of the blues as a basis for drawing upon various African matrices. Samuel Floyd states that blues were both the bedrock and propelling force of bebop, bringing about three main developments: a new harmonic conception using extended chord structures that led to unprecedented harmonic and melodic variety. Developed an even more highly syncopated linear rhythmic complexity and a melodic angularity in which the blue note of the fifth degree was established as an important melodic harmonic device. The re-establishment of the blues as the music's primary organizing and functional principle. While for an outside observer the harmonic innovations in bebop would appear to be inspired by experiences in Western, serious music, from Claude Debussy to Arnold Schoenberg, such a scheme cannot be sustained by the evidence from a cognitive approach. Claude Debussy did have some influence on jazz, for example on Vic Spidervecka's piano playing. And it is also true that Duke Ellington adopted and reinterpreted some harmonic devices in European contemporary music. My writing. It is well known that Charlie Christian and several other jazz musicians smoked marijuana. Louis Armstrong said that when he was high on weed, he had deeper insights into music. The marijuana high that jazz musicians were on may have given them deeper insights into music, and these insights may have been expressed as bebop music. BeBop Jazz by the Guitar Man.